Yo, what's up, guys? We're back. This week it's for UFC Vegas 62, and it's going to be Alexa Grasso versus Viviane Araujo in the main event. Pretty interesting card. This first fight is a little bit low level, but overall the card is pretty solid. I actually think there's quite a few matchups that are interesting on the card, and I'm excited to break it down. But before we get started, just want to tell everyone we're coming off another really good week on the Patreon. So anyone that wants to go over there, make some money, get some bets, get some more content for MMA and support the channel, definitely appreciate everyone and recommend everyone to do that. Go to patreon.com/MMA Prediction Guru. And then let's try to get some more likes, some more comments on this video, man. I mean, this last video that I had didn't really have too many likes or comments. And, I don't like feeling like I'm talking to the void, man. I want to hear what you guys have to say a little bit and get some feedback. So if you really could, I really would appreciate it if you put some comments down below and let me know what you think about this fight card and some of my predictions and some of your predictions. So thanks for that if you do leave a comment down below. But this first fight of the night here, we got Mike Jackson taking on Pete Rodriguez. And with Mike Jackson and Pete Rodriguez here, we got two inexperienced guys. And Mike Jackson, skills-wise, he isn't bad. He has a decent jab. He has a fairly quick rear cross. He's tall. He's rangy. Tries to control distance and catch fighters coming in with straight shots. He also rolls with shots pretty well, stays composed. He's almost too calm in the cage, though. He tends to just flick his strikes out there. He doesn't throw with too much power. And he only has a really limited amount of fights. A large majority of his experience is through sparring, and it makes sense that he fights in that style. He's 37 years old, and being so inactive, you actually do have to give him some credit for staying in good enough shape to even perform at UFC level. But Mike Jackson, takedown defense is questionable at best. We haven't really seen it tested too much, but any fighter that gets taken down by CM Punk and stuffed against the cage, even if it was only for a minimal amount of time, that's a bad sign. In this fight, he won't have to deal with anyone trying to take him down, and he's going to get the striking fight that he wants. And he has some advantages in terms of length. He throws straight shots down the pipe. He's going to need to establish that jab right away and try to keep the heavy-handed Rodriguez on the outside. Technically, Jackson is coming in here off of a victory, which is also his officially first pro win. He got the win over CM Punk, but that got overturned to a no contest. And in his last fight, he got dropped right before the fight was ended. He got dropped and he was getting flurried on, but Dean Barry framed on his head, but kept his hands open, kind of gouged Jackson's eyes pretty bad. And that came right after Barry had landed an illegal spinning back kick to the nuts. So all that kind of accumulated for Barry, and he got DQ'd, and thus Jackson got his first win. It wasn't really a win that instilled too much confidence in me backing Jackson going forward, but it did secure him another fight in the UFC. And his opponent, Pete Rodriguez, heavy-handed Mexican boxer. He is inexperienced. He's 4-1. His last fight was his first UFC fight, his first loss. And he got tasked with the tough fight. He was fighting Jack Della Maddalena on short notice. He got knocked out in the first round, and that fight was in January, so it's been ample time for Rodriguez to recover. We should see a better version of him in this fight. He got the UFC jitters out of the way, and the show with Jack Della was on pay-per-view, so he's facing more fanfare, probably more fight week duties on top of it being short notice. In this fight, Rodriguez is a huge favorite. He's 12 years younger. He's obviously the more serious MMA fighter. Mike Jackson is a reporter. He's a photographer who loves the game, but just is doing this for fun. He got lucky to get in the UFC because of the whole CM Punk saga, and now he's just making the most of it. And it is funny that in 2022, Mike Jackson is the last one of those three main characters in that story still on the roster, with CM Punk and Mickey Gall being gone. But Pete Rodriguez, though, he's looking to have a future in the sport, move up the rankings. He's 25 years old, and this fight with Mike Jackson is a must-win. It's a soft pitch that he has to hit out of the park if he wants to have a future as a potential contender or ranked fighter. And so far, Rodriguez hasn't proven much himself. His best victory was over Roberto Pixley, who was 5-1 as a pro at the time they fought, but had beaten 5-0-0 opponents. Rodriguez's other wins have came over the 1-0 Jose Luis Rios, the 0-1 Yacer Guzman, and the 2-2 Jorge Elias. So none of those fighters, have gotten a win post Rodriguez fight, and none of them had anything to write home about before the Rodriguez fight. So Rodriguez most definitely still has a lot to prove, and so far all of his wins have came in the first round via knockout. His longest fight in a victory has been 2 minutes and 21 seconds. His longest fight period, which was his last fight, was 2 minutes and 59 seconds. Even as an amateur, 6 of Rodriguez's 7 wins came in the first round, and his other amateur win came in the second round, and it was only 50 seconds in, so it was only a 3-minute and 50-second fight. Rodriguez has never been in the third round in his career, and you could tell why, because he's very aggressive. He has one-punch knockout power in both hands. He sets things up with a jab fairly well. He'll double jab his way into range. He has a really nice lead hook. He likes to switch stances, so that hook can be left or right hand. And he will leap into it, get some extra extension on the punch as well. He's very accurate with it. He likes to rip the body and then go up to the head with it. And he also has a nice lead uppercut. His lead hook to rear cross or lead uppercut to rear cross combination is a fight ender. He's violently shut the lights out against all of his opponents so far in his wins. And I don't see that changing on Saturday if he does get the victory. He isn't a really active kicker, but in his last fight, he threw some leg kicks, some front kicks up the middle. And Rodriguez has shown virtually none of his grappling or wrestling game as a pro. In his fight with Roberto Pixley, he did defend a bad takedown attempt, got on top, landed some decent ground and pound from half guard, but it was brief, and that's the only grappling I've seen from Rodriguez as a pro. He's real quick, and he can be difficult to hit clean, and due to that, he kind of can get away with having bad defense, but his defense needs work, and fighters that can walk him down and control distance with long strikes can get to Rodriguez. Rodriguez holds his hands a little low, doesn't have much head movement. He has fast hands, and he's educated inside with his boxing, going body, going head. He gives fighters pause to stay in the pocket with Rodriguez because he has power. So his offense is his defense really right now. Against Jack Della, that was exposed a little bit. Rodriguez landed some heavy counters, but Jack Maddalena, he was cleaner with his technique. He threw more volume. He was throwing straight 1-2s. He was mixing in the feints, getting Rodriguez a little bit hesitant. And he was eventually able to TKO Rodriguez in that fight. Being Mexican, Rodriguez is tough, durable, but took a lot of clean crosses right at the end of the punch, and eventually you're not going to be able to handle all those shots. And there are a lot of question marks with Rodriguez. One main one is his cardio. If he gets extended and can't get his opponent out of there early, he may gas. We don't really know, but this fight should be an easy one for Pete Rodriguez. I think he's going to be comfortable in there against Mike Jackson, who's long but doesn't have power or the same killer instinct Rodriguez does have. I think Rodriguez is going to get hit a little bit, but he's going to land that left hook or big body head combo that rattles Jackson, changes the tide of the fight, and then Rodriguez is going to finish him off. Rodriguez is a great finisher. When he smells blood, he goes for the kill, and I don't see him letting Mike Jackson off the hook if he hurts him. So I'm going to go with Pete Rodriguez by first round knockout. As far as the line goes, I see him as a minus 700. I mean, not really a lot of value in that, even in a parlay. I don't know if I would parlay that just because Rodriguez hasn't proven enough to me to be that big a favorite even against Mike Jackson. Even the under is juiced to like minus 285 at minus 1.5 rounds. So I don't really see a lot of value in this fight, but I think Pete Rodriguez is going to go in there and prove the odds makers right and get a win here in dominant fashion. And in this next fight, we got a flyweight fight between CJ Vergara and Tatsuro Taira. And CJ Vergara so far in the UFC, he's not really been getting the respect. He's had 2 fights. Both of them have been against young prospects, trying to build off beating Vergara. And now, yet again, the UFC's given him another young prospect to test here in Tatsuro Taira. And Vergara, he got in the UFC by getting an upset in brilliant fashion. He knocked out Bruno Correa on the Contender Series in 41 seconds. His first UFC fight was at UFC 268. He fought O'Day Osborne, ended up losing a close decision in that one. Then he ended up fighting Klidson Rodriguez in his last fight, won a split decision in that fight, and now he's getting to fight the pride of Japan, Tatsuro Taira, who's 22 years old and coming off a win in his UFC debut. And Tatsuro Taira is one of the biggest prospects in the flyweight division today. He's currently on a 20-fight win streak if you include his amateur career. As a pro, he's 11-0, and he was able to pass the test. He won by decision in the United States in his UFC debut. And Taira, if he can beat CJ Vergara, will likely get a fight versus a top 15 opponent in his next matchup. So it's a big fight for him. And a lot of people have been very high on Taira, so let's see if he can impress once again. But CJ Vergara, his opponent, He's going to give him some issues. He's an aggressive pressure fighter, good head movement. He likes to slip and rip with hooks and the rear crosses. Those are the main shots you have to worry about with Vergara. He's quick. He can counter with the left hook or slide into range with the right hand. He's good at attacking the body, which is a huge part of his game. He wears fighters down with the pressure, the body punches, and then he can start to beat them down the stretch. He has a nasty clinch game as well, real nice knees from the Muay Thai clinch. His defense isn't good. He eats a lot of punches, but he's willing to walk through them to give his own and tire his opponents out, and he's durable enough to implement that game plan. And he was able to show some improved grappling in his last couple UFC fights, but CJ Vergara is not the best on the ground. I think if he finds himself on bottom with Tatsuro Taira, Vergara will be at a huge disadvantage. Vergara tends to give his back, and against Taira, that'll be an awful decision. He was submitted by Devin Miller with the rear naked choke, and he did all right against Criton Rodriguez, but I think there's a big difference between Rodriguez and Taira on the ground. And in the third round, Rodriguez was able to take the back for a large portion of the round, and I think Taira would have been able to find a finish from there. But Vergara against both Ode Osborne and Clayton Rodriguez was able to reverse a couple takedowns, get on top, ride out the top position from full guard, and win a round that way. I don't think he'll be able to do that against Taira, who's more composed and not going to shoot bad takedowns or get tired, in my opinion. But Vergara's cardio is elite, so that's something that anyone faces has to account for. And Tatsuro Taira, he's a very tall flyweight with Misha style, much more effective. In the stand-up, he's light on his feet. He likes to stay on the outside, throw inside-outside leg kicks, and force fighters to come to him so he can counter with the rear crosses. He has really fast hands, and when he can catch opponents running into the punch, he can really stun them. He was able to drop Carlos Candelario, and he does a good job attacking the body and then coming up to the head, so he mixes up the levels of his shots. And his kicking game also looks sharper than ever in his last fight. He was setting up the left high kick really well with the right cross. He was working nice round kicks, front kicks to the body. And Taira still isn't great on the inside. That's where Vergara's going to have the advantage. Vergara's going to try to pressure him, and that's where Taira on the inside can hold his hands low, and he can get clipped a little bit, and he's kind of low volume. So fights can be closer than they need to be at times. But Taira in his last fight was able to control distance better than I've ever seen. He was throwing more powerful shots, and he was using better setups. So being 22 years old, he's going to get better, and he's extremely confident. I imagine he'll be super tough to finish with strikes. I've seen him rocked a little bit in one of his regional scene fights, but never seen him get put in serious danger. And Asian fighters are known for being able to take an ungodly amount of damage. So Taira, I don't think is going to be any different. And Taira's a very strong grappler. That's his main style. He wants to get fighters to overextend so he can get in on the double or around to the back, and he has nice trips against the cage. When he gets fighters to the ground, he's really good with his back takes, really good control there. He'll get that body triangle and just bank that round by keeping the position or find the choke. And I've seen Taira hit submissions in transitions. He's pretty slick from different positions on top or on bottom. He's a problem on the mat, period. His triangles from bottom are super dangerous. And Taira in his last fight did face a scrappy, tough opponent in Carlos Candelario, and Candelario was able to survive on the mat, but basically was dominated. Whenever Candelario got on top, he was unable to get any damage off, and Taira showed a good ability to stay safe and eventually work his way back to top position. Sometimes Taira could struggle to get fights to the ground. He doesn't have the best wrestling as of now, but I think his wrestling looked better. In his last fight, he showed an improved single leg, so he's already improving with his takedown game. And I think that even though Candelario took him down a couple times, I don't see Vergara being a threat to take him down. I don't think he'll even attempt any takedowns. And Candelario in the third round was able to get fairly deep on a guillotine, get some top control time. It was definitely Candelario's best round, but I don't think Taira has cardio issues. He was just facing a tough opponent. His cardio and his composure are very good for someone his age and experience level. One thing for Taira I think he could really take advantage of in this fight is the fact that CJ Vergara stands so heavy on his lead leg. Taira could chop up his leg with kicks, and he can also get the single leg. And I think Taira's going to look great in this one. I think he's going to find the submission victory in the first round or maybe the second. I think Taira's going to either clip Vergara with a big right cross and drop him, or find the single, get to the back, find that rear naked choke. And I think this fight is set up for Taira to win, look good. And Vergara's tough. He could get on the inside defensive takedowns and maybe get something going. But if Vergara wins, I think he'll get a knockout too. So I see this fight ending inside the distance either way. But I think Taira's going to get that first round submission. He's a minus 240 favorite, so a little bit rich, but I think it's warranted. I would actually line him like a minus 300. So see a little bit of value there. I think Taira should get the job done here and has a good stylistic matchup in front of him. So for me, Taira by first round submission is the pick. And up next here, we got a female fight between Piera Rodriguez and Sam Hughes. And this should be an interesting fight. I think it's close on paper and close on the money line. I think it should be a little bit closer than it is, but Piera Rodriguez, she's a big-time power striker on the feet. She doesn't really move a lot, but she has very fast hands, powerful counters, and kind of controls the center, stands flat-footed, and slowly walks girls down and makes them come to her. And she really likes to throw 2-3s and 3-2s. She is low volume, and she really does weight a lot on her opponents, but she throws heat, and she's fast. So when she comes in, she can land heavy and make up for that low volume. And Rodriguez does have deficiencies in the stand-up. She has that lack of movement, waiting to sit and counter. So fighters can use feints to get her to open up and then throw straight shots down the middle, land those. And if they're fast, they can get in and out, land straight shots, and get a little bit ahead, as well as throwing some kicks. Rodriguez, also due to being flat-footed, can be backed up and clinched up. And she did drop the first round against Kay Hansen. She got taken down and held down in that round. She did prove in that fight that she's an underrated grappler. She was able to reverse some takedowns, get on top, and control pretty easily. In the third round, Rodriguez, I think, saw that she was able to get those takedowns and control easy in the second. So she went right back to that, got the takedown early in the third, and rode out the fight in the top position and won that decision. She was able to take the back when Hansen attempted to stand up and clearly won the third round. Her cardio is good, and she tends to get better as fights go on. Her pressure, her power tends to wear on opponents. And in order to take out Rodriguez, you need to either be the superior wrestler and grappler and be able to take and hold Rodriguez down, or feint, use distance control, range striking, combinations, and overcome that power punching. For Sam Hughes, she's a big girl for the weight class. She's going to have a slight height and reach advantage in this fight, which could pay dividends. And she definitely has some things in her style that should pose some issues to Rodriguez. She has good pressure. She feints well. She has a solid jab. She has decent footwork and does a good job of not just blindly moving in a range. She does it more intelligently. She will also pressure fighters into the clinch against the cage, where she's pretty strong and improving. Her chin is good. She could take big shots if she needs to. And she always shows up in awesome shape, so you don't have to worry about her getting tired. She's going to be at a big speed disadvantage in this matchup, so I think she has to grapple to be effective. She needs to back Rodriguez to the cage, clinch, win the clinch, get on top. I think if she can get on top, she could control and do some damage with her ground and pound. Recently, since Sam Hughes has teamed up with Fortis, she's done a lot better job, in my opinion, with her game planning, being more aggressive, coming forward, and using what her strengths are, which is the wrestling. And her wrestling has really looked good. It looked good in her last fight against Elise Reed. And Hughes also throws good volume, but I think Rodriguez, who's low volume, will kind of oblige in a firefight if Hughes brings it. So Hughes has to be smart in the way that she strikes. She has to use the jab, use a lot of feints, try to stay long, and really implement those takedowns so you can get Rodriguez thinking about that. And ultimately, I think that could make the striking closer. But it's a fairly tough fight to call. I'm going to give the slight edge to Sam Hughes. I think the striking will be competitive, with Hughes landing more volume, probably being the girl going forward, but eating the bigger punches. But the difference will be some clinch control time and some takedowns from Sam Hughes. I think Hughes is a level above in the grappling in terms of who Rodriguez has been facing. I think she's better than Kay Hansen. And Kay Hansen was able to win that first round by getting the takedown, controlling on top. I feel as if Hughes is going to be able to continue that momentum and not get tired, not start to lose the grappling. I think she'll be able to win it all the way through. She's durable. She has the toughness to take the shots and keep pushing. Her last fight, she looked good. And like I said, I think she's improving, gaining confidence now that she's with Fortis. So I'm going to pick Sam Hughes to win a close decision here by implementing the same game plan she did in her last fight against Elise Reed. And this next fight, we got a bantamweight fight between Victor Henry and Raphael Assunscao. And Raphael Assunscao is a legend, but the time is definitely near for him. Maybe has already come. And he's lost 4 fights in a row, 3 in devastating fashion. He hasn't gotten a win since July of 2018. And like always, he's been fighting fighters at the top of the heap in the division. But One thing that is alarming, and he's always been very durable, notoriously difficult to hit. In his first 32 fights, he'd only been finished 2 times and only once by KO TKO. His last 5 fights, he got dropped, hurt badly before getting choked out against Marlon Moraes. And then he got knocked out cold against Cody Garbrandt and Ricky Simon, which were his last 2 fights. This is the end of the road for Assunscao. He has to win this fight if he wants to keep going in his career. He's 40 years old at this point, and he's accomplished it all. I mean, he's beaten almost all the best fighters of his era in his weight class. He's even beaten some guys like Joe Lozon, George Masvidal out of his weight class. He has nothing left to prove outside of maybe ending his career in a positive note on a win. And he has changed it up. He's training in Extreme Couture at the UFC PI for this fight, opposed to in Atlanta like usual. So we'll see if that helps him snap this losing streak. But Victor Henry is definitely a step down on paper in competition to a majority of Assunscao's opponents over the last 9-10 years. But he also hasn't had that chance to prove himself. After grinding it out for 26 fights before making it to the UFC, Henry entered the UFC with a bang in his first fight. He went in there against Raoni Barcelos and soundly defeated a man who's one of the better fighters in the world at 135 pounds. Really opened some eyes. And Henry had won 9 of his last 10 fights and beaten some good names in that run as well, such as Albert Morales. He beat Masanori Kanehara, Yuki Montoya. He beat Denis Lafritev. He beat Kyler Phillips, Takufumi Otsuka. And Raphael Assunscao is definitely the biggest name fighter he's ever stepped in there with and one of the best bantamweights of all time. But he's catching Assunscao at the right time. Assunscao's well out of his prime, and Victor Henry's a big favorite. So this is a huge fight for Victor Henry. He's went in there. He was a big underdog against Raoni Barcelos, who's kind of a tough fighter to face but doesn't have the name. And now he's getting in there with a guy that's a little bit older that he's a big favorite against after showing that performance against Barcelos, but as a name and has a history behind him. And if Victor Henry can get this win, he'll be right in the mix. He could be fighting top 10 guys. So it's a really good fight. And at 35 years old, it's a fight that he needs to take at this point in his career. He can't be lollygalling around and taking lower level matchups. But when you look at this fight, it is a much different fight than the fight he had with Raoni Barcelos. In the Raoni Barcelos fight, Victor Henry got a guy in Barcelos that was wanting to stick in the pocket, throw combinations, look to probably get the knockout on Henry. I think maybe he underestimated him a little bit. He didn't mix in the wrestling at all. And Victor Henry showed, he has a great chin. There was a ton of volume, switches stances, real slick striking. He mixes the level of his punches and his kicks. He throws a lot of different variations of strikes, and he's just real slick. And he has a great chin, and his volume really wears on guys. He doesn't have that one-punch KO power, but he was landing sneaky shots that were hurting Barcelos too. And he's definitely improved his striking quite a bit. Before, he was more of a grinder, a guy that he didn't have the best wrestling against high-level wrestlers, but he was able to grind out lower-level fighters. And that's why he, I think, never got that chance in the UFC, because he had more of a boring style. And then you saw him against grapplers that were better than him, and he was getting out-grappled in those fights, getting taken down and held down. So I could see why the UFC could look at that and say, we don't want a grappler that maybe isn't the highest level grappler but can beat some entertaining strikers on the roster. But now Henry has turned into an entertaining striker himself, and he has great cardio. He has a high-level experience. He can grapple as well. And but why I say it's different matchup here with Raphael Assunscao is Assunscao, even now in his older age, that he's slower and he's not as mobile, he's still a guy that's never going to just sit in the pocket and make it a war like Raoni Barcelos did. Assunscao is going to be a guy that's moving, looking to use his footwork to land counter punches, be in, be out. And Henry, he didn't have to deal with anyone really trying to take him down in his last fight, which I do think he has subpar takedown defense. He stands really tall and likes to come forward, really press forward heavily, which does give up the hips. And Assunscao, I don't think he's as good of a wrestler as he used to be, but Assunscao, I think in this fight is going to be looking to move around and land his counters, which is going to be there Henry's going to be there to hit. He stands tall, he has his chin in the air, and even though he has fairly good defense, he is hittable. And I think Assunscao, in his prime could have landed some counters and could have maybe hit some takedowns and made this an easy fight. But, at what point is it kind of fool's gold to keep saying, Assunscao has some value here, he has some value at plus 260? At one point, the value is gone and maybe he shouldn't keep fighting anymore. And against Ricky Simon, I really felt like his ability to take a punch was gone. He was he got rocked off the first shot that he took and looked a little bit slower. He didn't seem like he had that ability to take a shot nearly as well as he did in the past. And I'm kind of worried about that here against Henry, who's a high volume guy. Henry, I don't think is as explosive or fast and powerful as a Ricky Simone, though. And he's not really a guy. He only has 6 knockouts, and a few of those have been TKOs with ground and pound. So he's not the type of guy to usually get to finish by knockout on the feet. So I'm actually going to say this one goes to decision, but I could easily see Henry taking him out too. And it's just too hard to pick Assunscao these days. I think matchup-wise, it's a better matchup than some of the recent guys, because he's getting a guy that's going to be coming forward, coming at him, and he could take him down. He really couldn't take down Ricky Simone when he fought Cody Garbrandt. He was getting a really fast, slick striker. But, I mean, Henry, he's not in his prime necessarily. You could say he's 35 too, but he's bigger guy. He's more durable at this stage in his career. He's putting on better performances. His striking, he looks faster, more crisp than Assunscao does these days. And I think he's going to be able to get the win here and probably win by decision. So I'm going to go with Victor Henry in this one. In this next fight, we have a middleweight fight, and both these guys are going to be looking to bounce back from their first career losses in the UFC. And I would pull out all the stops to win this fight if I'm Jacob Malkoun or Nick Maximoff, because I could see the loser of this fight potentially being cut. Both these fighters are effective, but they have the same style, constant takedowns, grinding. And that style isn't conducive to fan-friendly fights. I wouldn't be surprised if the UFC put these two guys together so they could cut the loser. Malkoun so far is 2-2. He's definitely fought the vastly superior competition. He's fought guys like Brendan Allen, Phil Hawes, Abdulrazak Al-Hassan. All those guys have been ranked in the UFC at one point or another. And his last fight with Brendan Allen was a close fight that he could have won, but was on the wrong end of a close decision. So he's been competitive with solid guys. He was able to get the win over Abdulrazak Al-Hassan. And Nick Maximoff, he's been fighting lower level competition. He began the UFC 2-0, but he beat Cody Brunage and Puna Soriano, who both aren't extremely impressive wins. I suppose that Soriano is a decent victory, but Maximoff's last fight did not go as planned. He had some heat and build-up between himself and Andre Petrosky. They were talking some shit before the fight, but Maximoff got caught in an anaconda choke before the fight even got started, really. Lost in 1 minute and 16 seconds. And he has to bounce back, look for a good performance after a fight like that. And both these guys are grapplers. I would argue that Maximoff is superior on the ground with his jiu-jitsu for sure. Probably the better wrestler too. I think Malkoun's stand-up is more advanced. He has a good jab, but he's shorter, he's smaller than Maximoff, and I don't think that he has the speed to keep Maximoff at range with that jab, nor the power to kind of keep him at bay. I think Maximoff, he's kind of gritty. He has okay boxing, and he's going to be able to use his size to kind of use the striking to force the wrestling. And I see him being able to win the scrambles, control on top, and win the fight that way. Malkoun does good against opponents, usually that he can out-grapple. And in his last fight with Brendan Allen, you saw him in there with the grappler, and he had some issues at certain points in the fight. Even though he got quite a few takedowns and some control time, he also got reverse controlled. And he didn't really have much success on the ground in terms of ground and pound or submission damage. And with Nick Maximoff, I just think that the height, being 5'9" to 6 foot, is going to play a big difference in on the feet in Nick Maximoff's ability to close that distance, and Malkoun not being able to use the jab that successfully. I also think Maximoff is the better athlete, and him being the bigger guy is going to help him win the wrestling and the grappling scrambles. I think that he has a really high jiu-jitsu acumen, and even though he did get caught in his last fight with the anaconda, I don't really think there's a big submission threat in there with Jacob Malkoun. And I also think Maximoff just kind of got caught sleeping with Petrosky, almost literally, I guess. But he kind of just didn't take Petrosky seriously on the ground and paid for it. With Jacob Malkoun, I don't see him making that mistake, for one. And for two, I don't see Malkoun being able to lock in a submission like that. I don't really see him as a big submission threat. And I just feel like Nick Maximoff is able to grind. He's not going to get tired like Malkoun has gotten some of his other opponents tired. And he can beat Malkoun the way that Malkoun beats other fighters. I think he's going to be able to out-grapple him, take his back, get in some dominant positions, and end up winning the fight by decision. Malkoun, for him to win, I think he's going to need to keep it standing, pressure, stuff the takedowns, use the jab, and try to box. And that's not usually his style. So I think this is stylistically a fight where they're trying to get Nick Maximoff the win. I think he obviously, to me, there's still more stock at Nick Maximoff than Jacob Malkoun, even though both have kind of that boring style. Nick Maximoff, a little more marketable. He has the Nick Diaz thing behind him, and I also feel like he is a little bit better of a talker. So I think that they would rather Malkoun take the loss here, and I think Nick Maximoff is going to win the decision. So I'm going to go with Maximoff for this one to bounce back, get the win. And with this next fight, we got this fight in the bantamweight division. And in terms of a bet and a breakdown, I really don't have a big breakdown or a strong opinion on this fight, but I think it's going to be a hell of a fight. I think it's going to be fun to watch and a banger. And it's just tough with this fight because I'm not really that impressed with Martinez. I feel like he is pretty slick. He has good counter striking. He's big for the weight most of the time. He has fought at 125 as well. At 135, he's still tall and rangy, but with Brandon Davis, he obviously is a guy that used to fight at higher weights and kills himself to come down to 35. So he's going to have longer reach and be able to match the height of Martinez in this one. So Martinez is going to have that advantage. But Martinez, he likes to come forward, switch stances, wait on his opponent, stand right in front of him in the pocket and look to counter. And he has real nice 3-2s. He has power. We've seen him knock guys out with one punch that are pretty formidable. You know, guys like Ricky Tercios. He's got in knockouts against Jose Johnson. So he's KO'd guys that are in the UFC with one punch. So you have to respect his power. Even in his last fight where he got completely dominated against Ronnie Lawrence, he did get a couple of knockdowns in that third round. So he's dangerous. But with Martinez, it's a lot of waiting. And I feel like he doesn't have that top end speed or precision with his counter striking. He can be a little bit loopy. And I don't really feel like he's the most quick guy going from A to B. He doesn't throw straight punches a lot of the time. So a lot of his counters come too slow and guys can get in, get out, land on him. We saw Ronnie Lawrence be super successful with the blitzes against Martinez, close the distance, drop him several times. And Martinez showed a lot of toughness to survive through that, but he just was totally bewildered by, Ronnie Lawrence's ability to blitz in, either land the punch or level change and get the takedown. And Ronnie Lawrence got countless takedowns on him, and he dropped him multiple times. So it's just a clinic for Ronnie Lawrence in that fight against Martinez, outside of where he got caught with the spinning back fist and then dropped with a follow-up shot. But, I feel as if Martinez, he relies on guys that aren't the best strikers, walking him down, switching stances to cut the cage off, getting him backed up near the cage, then using his speed and his counter ability to land power shots and knock him out. And, I just don't know if that's going to be a successful game plan in the UFC. Martinez, in terms of his grappling, I think he's a little bit questionable there. I don't really think he has the best wrestling, nor do I think he has the best submission defense. We did see him get submitted by Draco Rodriguez on the Contender Series. But he's going to be coming in here facing Brandon Davis, who's getting up there in age, a guy that's had a lot of mileage in terms of not only being almost 33 years old, but also just having a lot of wars. He is 1-5 in his last 6 UFC fights, came back to the UFC after 4 wins in a row and got knocked out in the first round. So it's tough to have a lot of confidence in Brandon Davis. And Brandon Davis, I think a few years ago, would have won this fight very easily. Brandon Davis is one of these guys, country boy. He likes to go in there and brawl. And he does a good job in the pocket. He has nice straight shots. He could slip and rip. He used to be very durable. I don't know if that durability is still there after he got knocked out in his last fight, but he used to be very durable, could take shots to give shots. Also had a pretty good clinch game. And I think out of these two guys, he has the superior grappling. He's not necessarily a guy that's going to push the grappling, but we've seen him more later on in his career get some more takedowns in certain fights and use the clinch to land some big knees and things like that. But most of the time, Brandon Davis just wants to get in that pocket with you, exchange. And that's what Martinez wants to do too. So whoever ends up getting the better of that is going to be the winner. And like I said, I think Brandon Davis a few years ago, I just think he would be much slicker. He's a lot more composed in there. And even now, I think he is still. He has those nice straight shots. And I think he used to be the more durable guy. But recently, just some of his fights, I think he just looks super slow. He used to be a guy that liked to pressure and be on the front foot, and now he's accepting being on the back foot, getting backed up and things like that. And he did get knocked out in his last fight. So I just don't have a lot of trust in Brandon Davis right now. Even in his fights that he won outside the UFC on the regional scene, I went back and watched a few, and I felt like he was getting hit too much, looking really slow. And I think Martinez might be able to capitalize on that and land a knockout or be able to survive out of there with a decision. But, I mean, I could easily see Brandon Davis getting a KO too, or Brandon Davis being able to use his pressure striking to force the clinch, get some takedowns, win that way. So it's just, to me, going to be which type of Brandon Davis shows up. If he could show up looking like the old Brandon Davis back in form, then I think he can go in there and get the win. But I'm going to go with Mana Martinez, and I'm going to say he gets a first-round knockout in this one. And if he doesn't, he wins a close decision. So I just feel like maybe Brandon Davis is a little bit past it, maybe done a little bit. So I'm going to go with Martinez, but not that impressed with Martinez, more just a fade on Brandon Davis. So in terms of a bet, I would more lean on the underdog. I would say I'd rather bet Brandon Davis, see what potentially happens as the underdog, because I think he's the better fighter, but it's just the age and the potential durability issues at this point. But definitely a stay away fight for me in terms of the bet. I don't really have any interest in it. But as a pick, I'm going to go with Mana Martinez, and I'll say he actually does get that first round KO. And in this next fight, we have a short notice fight between Joanderson, Brito, and Lucas Alexander. Joanderson, Brito is going to be welcoming Lucas Alexander to the UFC. This is going to be his UFC debut. And originally, Brito, he was going to fight Melsik Bagdasaryan, which was going to be a great fight. Both those guys are really explosive guys, and Bagdasaryan is a high-level striker. But now Bagdasaryan is out, and we see Brito fighting Lucas Alexander. And Joanderson, Brito, 2 UFC fights so far. His first UFC fight, he fought Bill Algeo. It was a back-and-forth fight, but he lost that fight by decision. He kind of got himself tired going for takedowns wrestling, and he wasn't able to control Bill Algeo, who's really, really good at scrambling back to his feet after he's taken down. And Brito ended up losing in the striking in the later rounds, but he came back with a vengeance. He came in against Andre Fili, knocked him out in under a minute, and that was a huge win. I mean, Andre Fili's a guy that just came back, looked good again in his last fight, and has been around the UFC for a long time. So Brito was able to get a big-time victory, and you'd think he would have got a better opponent in this one, and Bagdasaryan would have been a pretty good opponent, but he's going to get a dangerous guy, and Lucas Alexander, who's on a 5-fight winning streak, good Muay Thai striker, but not really much of a name. And for Lucas Alexander, he trained out of Fusion XL, and most of the time when you see Fusion XL guys, they're more grappling-based fighters. You see guys like Jacare at that gym, another guy at that gym is Rodolfo Vieira, so they have some really high-level grapplers at that gym. But Lucas Alexander doesn't really have that grappling acumen from what I've seen. It seems like he's gotten better with his submission game off of his back and using submissions to work back to his feet. But he's a striker, and he likes to keep it on the feet and use his Muay Thai. He is a big guy for the weight. If you look at his last fight, he did miss weight. So I would be not surprised if he came in heavy for this fight either. But he is pretty tall, 5'11", and he likes to come forward. He's very fast. Throws real nice 3-2s, 2-3s. He'll end combinations with leg kicks. And early in the fight when he's fresh, he's pretty dangerous. He throws really quick with his hands. You'll throw flying knees as well. And he's throwing heavy, and he's throwing really, really fast strikes. But if you force him to grapple especially, but just in general, even if you don't force him to grapple, he does slow down. And early in the fight, you see it moving a lot more, feinting a lot more, being in and out. His strikes are coming a lot quicker. And then as the second round comes, the third round comes, he's more flat-footed. He's plodding forward. He's still trying to use that speed to counter, but he's not really as quick anymore, and he's much more hittable. He can be taken down, and that's a big issue with Lucas Alexander is his takedown defense. He has improved it a little bit, but he's still fairly easy to take down. And when you do take him down, he gives his back to stand up. Doesn't really have the greatest game on bottom. He will go for leg locks and some low percentage submissions that put him in some bad positions against superior grapplers. And he's fought a lot of lower level competition, so this is a big step up in competition for him. And he's an entertaining fighter to watch. He has a fun striking style, but I think he has a lot of holes in terms of cardio. I think that he's a hittable guy as well, and his grappling isn't really up to par. So you compound all that with being on short notice, I think he's going to be in for a really rough fight against Joanderson Brito, who I think is a fringe top 15 fighter. Brito, he's a little bit shorter, more compact, but he has long arms, very explosive. He is super aggressive. He'll close the distance and has that shootbox style to heart, man. I mean, he takes it to heart. He'll come forward, throw big bombs, big overhands, and he can also wrestle, pretty explosive doubles, get on top, control. And I think in this fight, Brito should wrestle right away, get a couple takedowns, make out Alexander tired, get that lactic acid in his legs and his arms, make him a little bit slower on the feet, and then you could beat him up and maybe even knock him out standing. And I think Brito is definitely the superior fighter in this matchup. When you look at Joanderson Brito, I think he, on the feet, might not be as technical, but I think he is able to keep his explosiveness, his power, his speed longer in the fight. So overall, I would say he's a better striker because he can keep those blitzes. He has a little bit better defense, and I think he has the power advantage as well. Alexander, he's going to have to find a big knee up the middle. He's going to have to land a big high kick or chop down with some really heavy leg kicks early. Do something that really damages Joe Anderson early or takes him out, or I think he's going to get taken down early. He's going to get tired, and then he's going to get finished either by knockout with a big overhand or taken down and submitted. So for me, I'm going to pick Joanderson Brito to win inside the distance in this fight. And I'll say he gets the first round submission either by rear naked choke or by guillotine. And in this next fight, we got two untrustworthy guys with Misha Cirkunov taking on Alonzo Menifield. And Misha Cirkunov, he's coming back to 205 pounds after two losses at 185. He went down, tried that 185-pound thing because he was getting knocked out a lot at 205. I don't know if he felt undersized or it's just he thought maybe he could take the shots better against smaller guys. But he ended up losing to Krzysztof Jotko by decision. Then in his last fight, he got armbarred by Wellington Turman. And I guess he's decided the weight cuts aren't worth it. 185 pounds was not for him. Moving back up to 205, he's going to be taking on Alonzo Menifield. Alonzo Menifield is coming off a win over Askar Morozov, which that's not, to me, I mean, that was kind of a bullshit fight where, you guys remember, Morozov had that real wacky record where he had a lot of fake fights and everything like that, and then his record ended up getting changed like 3 times during the fight week. He got cut after the fight, looked pretty terrible, and Menifield ran through him in the first round, got him in the crucifix and finished him. But before that, Menifield had a real questionable loss to William Knight, and he's had some bad performances as well. So I think both these guys are more fades in my book, so it's hard to trust a guy and really pick a guy as a clear winner. But you're looking at Misha Cirkunov more recently, and he's really had no ability to take a punch. He's gotten hurt very easily, and Alonzo Menifield, if anything, he has bricks for hands and big power, so that's definitely something that's very concerning if you're on the Misha Cirkunov side. But Alonzo Menifield, I feel as if more recently he's been trying to fight more technical and keep it on the outside and more try to show that he's an all well-rounded MMA fighter, uses grappling, try to preserve his gas tank and keep his cardio intact for 3 rounds. Like when he fought Ed Herman, I feel like if he would have unloaded and went back to that old Menifield style that he had against guys like Paul Craig or other guys that he was finishing real quick back in the day, he could have potentially got him out of there and had a highlight reel type performance. But I think he's starting to put it together. I mean, his last fight he looked good against Morozov. He finished him, but I mean, it's kind of, that's an iffy win. But with this one, I mean, I don't think Menifield is going to be able to use that grappling, or I don't think he's going to even want to mess with the grappling of Misha Cirkunov, who's a black belt, who has a lot of real nice slick submissions and who can grapple pretty well. And I think for Misha, he's going to be wanting to make it more of a grappling match in this one, whereas Menifield has been trying to grapple more in recent fights. But on the feet, Menifield kind of just not super technical, but he has Muay Thai. He throws some decent kicks. He can close the distance and has big, heavy punches. He's explosive. And Misha Cirkunov has struggled with that type of fighter, explosive power punchers. So Misha's going to have to prove that he could take a shot. But Cirkunov, he's a southpaw. Obviously, he has okay striking. I mean, he's real stiff, but he has decent body kicks on the outside. And I guess if you were going to say one guy's more technical than the other, maybe Misha's more technical, but I think he's at a big disadvantage on the feet just because he can't take a shot as good as Alonzo. And I don't think he's as aggressive anymore because he's been knocked out quite a few times, not as confident. And I also don't think he has the same power, explosiveness, And Menifield, if it stays striking, I think will definitely find that chin and knock Misha out. So Misha has to somehow get this fight to the ground, get in the top position, and work his grappling that we've seen him use and get submissions on against higher level guys in the way, even fighters like Jimmy Crude and people like that. But Menifield has proven that he's really hard to take down. He's a load, he's big, he's explosive, and I just can't trust Misha Cirkunov. He's come back to 205, and I do like him more at 205 than 185, but even at 205, I think he has a really terrible chin. He's a very hittable guy early, plotty. He comes in, and it's not like he's an overwhelming wrestler, so I think it's not going to be like he could just take down Menifield with ease. So ultimately, I think Menifield's going to be able to knock this guy out probably in the first round. If he can, and it starts going to the second or third, going to a decision, then, man, I mean, I don't know. I could see it going either way because I just can't trust Menifield at all. But I think if he can't beat Misha Cirkunov at this point, then I don't really know what he's doing in the UFC. I think Misha Cirkunov, anyone that has power, that's explosive, that's aggressive, that closes distance on him and stuff a takedown or two and land some heavy shots, can get him out of there. And I'm going to hope Alonzo Menifield can do that. So for me, the pick is going to be Alonzo Menifield to win via first round knockout. And with this next fight, I'm pretty confident that Dusko Todorovic is going to get this one done. We got Jordan Wright taking on Dusko Todorovic. And whenever Jordan Wright's in the cage, there always is a chance that Jordan Wright can get the win just because he throws a lot of danger strikes, big body kicks, big head kicks, spin kicks, knees. So if he lands something at range, especially early, he can turn anyone's lights out. So that's the danger with Jordan Wright. But you know, I feel like Jordan Wright, he has way too many holes to be in the UFC, honestly. He is a guy that has decent range striking and keep it at range. He has good kicks. He'll try to land that rear cross, and he can end up throwing some really nice spin kicks. And if he can go forward, then he'll mix in knees and get real confident and can be real aggressive. But when he's facing a guy that can kind of control that distance too and press him backwards with effective pressure and get inside, his defense is really bad. He gets real spastic. He'll shell up and give a lot of openings to be hit. He doesn't move his feet and just gets very, it seems like he'll get almost scared to get hit. And in doing that, he leaves a lot of openings to get knocked out. And I feel like he just doesn't really do well in the pocket. He doesn't really throw much back. He doesn't really have much in the way of effective defense. So I think that's a big issue for him. And in his last fight, he tried to mix in the wrestling. He got a takedown, and he ended up trying to go for another takedown and got guillotined. And I've never seen him use offensive wrestling. That was the first time I'd seen him really go to that. So that could be something that he's trying to work on and bring into his game. But Dusko Todorovic is a good jiu-jitsu fighter. I don't think that he's going to be able to compete with Todorovic on the ground. And Jordan Wright, you know, also getting submitted in his last fight, could be a little bit hesitant to want to push the grappling again in another fight. But one thing about Jordan Wright, where I think he, besides at range with the kicks, he's also at his best is in the clinch. He's strong. He has real nice knees, and he's good in the clinch with knees and elbows, decent control. But he also can be stuffed against the cage, controlled there himself. Doesn't really have a good ability to switch position or turn off the cage, and can get held there and lose minutes in the fight. And Todorovic, I feel like, even though he's not really had the most success in the UFC, he's still a decent prospect. He's a guy that's athletic, that has pretty good striking. I like his left hook over the top. I think that's going to be able to land effectively. He kind of loops it, and I think it can get over and around that guard that Jordan Wright likes to use. And Dusko can close the distance with some pretty explosive combinations. Puts his hands together fairly well. He'll use the jab, double jab to set up the two, and when he can back guys up, he's pretty effective at cutting them off and landing shots as they try to exit on either side. We've seen him deal with this kicking type of style before. He's beaten fighters like Michel Pereira by knockout, who I think is more advanced style of Jordan Wright, the same style. And I think that Dusko also has the advantage in the wrestling and the grappling. I think he could take him down if he wanted to. I think he could clinch against the cage, you control him there. I also feel as if he has the edge in the striking realm because I think that he's going to be able to land his strikes clean, take Jordan Wright's strikes better. He's improved his defense. One thing about Dusko is he does sometimes pull back with his chin high, and he can hold his hands low and kind of dip. And if Jordan Wright times a perfect kick, he could turn Dusko's lights out. So there is a little bit of a worry there. but I just feel like Dusko is too well-rounded. He's durable enough, and I think that he's going to be able to use that pressure. He's going to back up Jordan Wright, land that left hook over the top, and hurt Jordan Wright, land a combination on him against the cage, take him out. And I see Dusko being victorious in this fight inside the distance. If he has to grind it out, I think he can do that too by pinning Jordan Wright against the cage, holding him there, eventually taking him down, working from the top position. And Jordan Wright, a lot of his fights and almost all of his victories have came really fast, and he's not used to being in a long fight. So I don't necessarily think that if the fight goes long, it starts to favor Jordan Wright or anything like that. I think that Dusko Todorovic, as long as he doesn't get clipped with a huge shot, a big kick early or a big spin kick, big knee, then I think he's going to be good to go and he's going to get this win. And historically, he's proven to be pretty durable. So even if he does have to face some adversity, I think he'd probably navigate his way through it. So I'm going to go with Dusko Todorovic to win this fight via first round knockout. And in this next one, we got a battle of two of the best flyweights in the world between Askar Askarov and Brandon Royval. And this is a fun contrast of styles. We got two guys that couldn't be more different inside the cage and outside the cage, honestly. I mean, we got Askar Askarov, that you see him, his expression never changes all week. The guy's all business. He's in there to do the job. And, you know, he can be pretty funny on Twitter. He could talk shit, and you do see him kind of trying to raise his profile a bit in that way. But during the fight week, he's just real stoic. He has that just classic Russian vibe to him. And then you got Brandon Royval. He's a guy that in the cage, he's real wild. He goes out there and just tries to make everything super crazy and find a finish. And outside the cage, you know, they call him Raw Dog Brandon Royval, and he is just the same kind of wild personality outside the cage. He's a fun guy to listen to in an interview, and he'll tell you what he thinks and give you some opinions, and pretty fun personality. So it's a fun fight. It's a battle of two guys that, like I said, are very different personality-wise, but inside the cage, when you see them perform, they both get it done. And Askar Askarov inside the cage, I mean, he has that classic Russian style where on the feet, he, you know, stands tall, light on his feet, can bounce in and out, has a nice jab, and kind of has that decent Russian kind of combat sambo boxing style. And then he has really, really elite wrestling, great chain wrestling, incredible cardio. He doesn't slow down. If he can get the back, he has good control from there. And he's also really good off his back. He has a dangerous full guard with a lot of submissions he could throw up. And one thing about Askarov, though, is if you can pressure him, which Brandon Royval is going to pressure him, but the thing about Royval is he going to be able to pressure without getting taken down? That's to be determined. And if you could pressure Askarov without getting taken down, you can start to exploit him a little bit in the striking. He leaves openings, hittable guy. And we've seen guys like Brandon Moreno knock him down with a head kick. We saw it his last fight. Kaikara France start to pressure him after defending some takedowns and dropped Askar Askarov as well. Ended up winning that decision down the stretch. So for Brandon Royval, he's going to have to be more composed in this one and try to control that distance, but keep that effective pressure and strike from range and beat up Askarov. But Askarov, you know, he's going to be doing what he does. He's going to be looking for the takedowns, looking for that control time, looking to get the back and get that body triangle and grind out the clock. And he's going to be looking to find a submission too. I'm sure he's going to be trying to find his first finish in the UFC. And if he can latch onto that neck like we saw other guys do against Brandon Royval, he could make him tap like Alejandro Pantoja did. So it's going to be, you know, Askar Askarov trying to implement his will with the grappling. And Brandon Royval is one of these guys that is all over the place on the feet. I feel like he could be better, but his style also, you know, does lead to finishes, so it's hard to really hate on it. But he is just real wild, doesn't really set things up the greatest, but he has a lot of length and height for the weight, so he'll throw up a lot of knees, a lot of head kicks, and he can get it up to the head very seamlessly. And he also has a lot of really nice spinning attacks. And his boxing and his hands aren't that good, though. I mean, he has an okay jab, but I've never really seen him be able to control the distance with the hands. More of a kick-first type of guy. And he throws a lot of spins and a lot of strikes that get him off balance. And all that kicking, all that spinning and stuff like that does make it easy to take him down. And it's been that way since he's joined the UFC. I mean, you've seen him get taken down multiple times in a ton of fights. And that's where the fun begins, though, with Brandon Royval a lot of the time. He's an incredible scrambler. He can keep scrambling, get you tired. And then once you're tired on the feet, that craziness starts to become way more effective. He could find the chin and knock you out. or he could eventually get into a dominant position on the ground and submit you. So Royval is going to be the guy that's going to be the more likely finisher if he has to get a finish. He also trains out of Colorado at Factory X, so his cardio is also almost impeccable. He doesn't really get tired. But we've seen in multiple fights with Brandon Royval where he gets taken down, he gives his back up, he gets controlled, and he's lucky to have gotten that win over Rogerio Bontorin where he was getting controlled for nearly that entire fight. Obviously, he got submitted by Pantoja. He got finished on the ground against Brandon Moreno, even though that was an injury. I just personally don't see how Brandon Royval is going to somehow in this fight show up and be composed enough to control the distance and not get taken down and not end up in all these scrambles. And I don't see Askarov being one of these guys that Brandon Royval can out-scramble, get tired. I think Askarov is going to be able to hit the takedowns and win most of those scrambles, or at least keep up in the scrambles so he can keep the top position, float on top, and eventually get the back or get into a position where he can control better, win out that round. And I see Askarov getting this win pretty concisely. I think he's going to look like a decent favorite, and I do got to go with Askarov in this fight. I think he's got a good matchup here with the guy that is dangerous. I mean, obviously, Askar is going to have to be very careful about those front knees up the middle, about the head kicks, and if he gets hit with a clean shot, Royval does have a chance to take him out or maybe even hurt him and submit him. But I think more than likely from what we've seen from both these guys fighting, Askarov is probably going to be able to implement his wrestling, get in dominant positions, and end up winning this fight on the top. So I got to go with Askarov to win this fight by decision. And up next here we have what in my opinion is the best fight on the card. I'm going to be most looking forward to watch this one with Jonathan Martinez and Cub Swanson. Cub Swanson, obviously he's a legend of the sport, but almost 39 years old, 38 years old, 11 months. So he's going to be 39 in 2 weeks, basically, essentially, when the fight goes down. And he's going to be coming down to 135 pounds, I think, for the first time ever. And if it's not the first time ever, it's the first time in a long time, at least since he's came to the UFC. And that kind of alarms me a little bit. I don't really know why Cub is making the decision to move down to 135. I do think he's never really been the biggest featherweight, so I don't know if it's going to be the most devastating cut in the world, but it's still something that gives me a little bit of concern. It gives me a little bit of a reason to doubt his performance. So I wish this fight was at 145. If it was at 145, I would have a lot more confidence in how Cub Swanson is going to look, but maybe he's feeling and looking good at 135. It could have a little bit of a resurrection like a Jose Aldo or something like that. And recently, Cub has been looking good. I mean, his last fight, he dusted Darren Elkins, took him out of there in a really exciting fashion. So that was a hell of a fight for him. But Jonathan Martinez, he's going to be a different story in comparison to Darren Elkins. Elkins is older. He's kind of had the same long career with a lot of damage that Cub Swanson has had. Jonathan Martinez is going to be 10 years younger. He is a guy that has won 3 fights in a row currently. I would say he's kind of underperformed a little bit in the UFC or not really met the expectations that people put on him. He had that fight against Andre Sukumtat where he debuted. He had a bad performance there, but came back, and for a while there, he was looking good. He got that big knockout over Pingwan Liu with the knee. He got the flying knee over Frankie Saenz. He beat Thomas Almeida, and it seemed as if he was maybe going closer towards being a top 15 fighter, but then he had the loss to Davey Grant, and since then he's taken that step down in competition and fought lesser guys. He fought Alejandro Perez, he fought Vince Morales, he fought that Georgian wrestler, Lavishvili or whatever. So he hasn't been really fighting the best level competition, and he hasn't been looking amazing. I mean, with the Vince Morales fight, he won clearly. The Perez fight, he got dropped in that fight. It was a close fight. And the fight with the Georgian guy, it was a pretty comprehensive win for Martinez there, but totally different matchup than what Cub Swanson is going to give him. You look at the Davey Grant fight, and you see a guy that is, using that switch speed, kind of changing the pace and closing the distance with real awkward angles, throwing looping shots and things like that. And that's what Cub Swanson likes to do, and he was given a lot of issues to Jonathan Martinez with that style, eventually knocked him out. And, man, I mean, this fight I think could go either way. Jonathan Martinez, I really do like his style. He's real slick. He's southpaw. He has really nice kicks. And if this fight stays on the outside, Martinez is probably going to eat Cub Swanson up. Martinez is a guy that on the outside, he has that real nice left kick to the body. He'll throw knees with that left leg as well, up the middle to the body and to the head. And he'll start attacking the legs too. So I think in this fight, leg kicks are going to be a big imperative for Jonathan Martinez. He needs to use leg kicks, use body kicks, front kicks, kicks that keep Cub Swanson on the outside, and then try to counter with that left cross when he comes in, or the left elbows, and try to just worry about speed, chopping Cub Swanson. And Cub Swanson, I mean, we've all seen how he fights. He's a super fun guy to watch. Has incredible boxing. He's super fast. I mean, I don't know if his hands are going to translate the same at 135, but at 145, he's one of the fastest fighters in the weight class with his hands. And he kind of is very explosive. He throws combinations from weird angles. He'll load up and throw with heat. And he definitely could give issues to Martinez. Martinez is a guy that on the outside, he's real slick, real pretty. But if you could pressure him, get him on the inside, his defense is not good and his chin is not good. He's been dropped in multiple fights. He got dropped against Andre Sukumtat. We saw him get knocked out against Davy Grant. He got dropped in his fight against Perez. So I question his chin a little bit, and I also question his defense in the boxing realm. Cub is going to have to make this a dogfight. He's going to have to pressure, get on the inside, and force boxing. And if he could do that, I think he could get the knockout, man. Man, it's a tough fight for me to predict, honestly, because I feel like if this fight was at 145, I would be leaning more towards Cub Swanson getting the win, just because I think that he could make it more of a dogfight, get on the inside, and eventually really, end up getting the better of it with the striking on the inside in the boxing. But at 135, I don't know how his body's going to react. I don't know if he's going to have, weak body, like in terms of can he take kicks to the body too? Like Giga Chikadze finished him with the body kick. I don't think Martinez has that Giga kick level of power or precision, but if he lands some nice body kicks, is that going to slow Cub down or shut him down? We don't really know. Cub to the head has been extremely durable. I mean, we haven't really seen him get knocked out since the Jose Aldo fight way back in the day, but maybe that could change at 135. No one really knows. And Martinez, I mean, he's just way younger. He has better feet, faster legs, and I think that he's going to be able to chop the legs early, maybe eat some big shots. I think Cub's going to have some moments, but I'm going to pick Martinez to win a close, gritty decision here. This is a fight that, honestly, though, if Cub looks good at 35, if he looks the same at 35 that he does at 45, then I think he's going to get the knockout in this fight. I just feel like Martinez, defense-wise, isn't the best, and he also kind of has a questionable chin. But the weight cut is really getting to me, man. I really can't vibe with that. I don't really know how Cub's going to look. And just because of that, I'm going to pick Martinez to win a decision. And lastly, we have the main event here between Alexa Grasso and Viviane Araujo. And this is another fight that's an excellent fight. I think the last two fights to close out this card are both really high-level fights. I would classify Alexa Grasso and Viviane Araujo as two of the better girls in all the weight classes in the UFC, not just 125 pounds, but 135, 115, 145. I think that Alexa Grasso and Viviane Araujo, skills-wise, could stack up with any of the girls in those divisions as well. And Alexa Grasso has already proven that a little bit by making it into the top 10 at 115 pounds. And I think back then at 115, she was given a little bit of away from her performance with the weight cut. At 125, she's much bigger, much more filled out, looks a lot better in my opinion. And she also is significantly younger at 115. I think that she's starting to grow into herself and become a better overall fighter technically as well. But she's going to be facing a bad bitch, man. Viviane Araujo, she's, a really good fighter. She's almost 36 years old at this point, but she's looking better and better. I mean, I got to say I was impressed with their last fight cardio-wise, because that's something that's been a knock on Viviane Araujo during her career, that she slows down and she has weak cardio. And I still think that's something that's to be determined. But her last fight with Angel Lee, she got dropped early in the fight. She was able to battle through that and then showed the cardio to wrestle and grind out a victory and win a decision after that in a really good back and forth fight. Araujo for that fight also weighed in at 125 pounds on the dot after, I believe, all of her other fights in the UFC had been her weighing in at 126. So I think that was just another little bit of a, I don't even know if you want to say a statement, but it was just something that you saw, okay, she didn't even have to take that extra pound and she looked really good cardio-wise. So she must have been in phenomenal shape during that fight camp. So she comes in and she hits 125 championship weight on the scale again. You can maybe expect her to be in really good cardiovascular condition. But looking at this fight, I think it's really, really interesting. Alexa Grasso, I think she has some of the best boxing of any female fighter in the UFC. She has really good footwork and movement, and she'll pull fighters into her counter combinations, super fast hands, and she's just real crispy with her combinations, real nice, real fluid, and sometimes she could struggle with girls that really pressure her heavy, but she lands clean counters and she stays on the bike, and she's gotten a lot better at not letting girls clinch her up and make it an ugly fight, make it a war. She has always had that chin, that Mexican toughness, so it's not like she's been kind of not willing to do that, but she lack firepower at times, at least at 115. It seemed like she sometimes would get overwhelmed with the grappling too in certain situations, but I think that she has some of the best footwork, some of the best counter combinations in the weight class at 125 pounds, some of the fastest hands. And that style historically has given some issues to Viviane Araujo on the feet. Araujo's a marauder. She's a girl that wants to pressure forward, use that Muay Thai. She throws real heavy leg kicks, and she has a nice speed when she throws, her shots with speed, like when she wants to just go from point A to point B. But most of the time she's loading up trying to throw power shots. She'll throw big looping hooks. She'll throw body head combinations, and she has big power and she's banging on you. So she's throwing, with heavy heat. She's trying to wear you out, trying to hurt you, trying to slow you down and take you out by knockout potentially. So her shots, I think, are a little bit more eye-popping, but Alexa's landing those cleaner punches. And I think that, you see Araujo sometimes, she can be a little bit plotty the way that she comes forward. At first, she's real good with her in and out movement, real fluid, and she's real fast with her feet. But she slows down quick in terms of that, and she could start to come in plotty, let girls kind of stick and move on her. We've seen that happen in both of her losses to Jessica Ai and Caitlin Chukagian. And I definitely see Alexa Grasso over time being the superior striker, as long as Araujo doesn't get to that lead leg, chop it up, and make her not be able to use her footwork. But I think if she can use her footwork or movement, stay on the outside and use those counter combinations, she's going to get the better of the striking. And Araujo, I think, is going to have to become a wrestler and really try to make it a dog fight, get it against the cage, get it to the ground, and try to implement that top game, stay out of the guard of Grasso, maybe get in a half guard or get into side control, stay heavy and control the fight. And that's where Araujo, we're going to see if she has the cardio, because Alexa Grasso, in my opinion, has improved a lot with their grappling tenfold. I mean, if you look at the Carlos Barza fight, she was getting taken down pretty easily in that fight. But you see her more recent fight, she's had much better takedown defense against Macy Barber. She showed a lot better clinch work. And she also, in my opinion, is really good off of her back at creating scrambles. She's really hard to hold down, nice triangles. She was able to create a scramble with a triangle, get on top in her fight with Macy Barber, and then get close to a rear naked choke at the end of the round. And then in her last fight, you saw her against Joanne Wood take the back, dominate, and get the submission win quickly. So I think she's improving a lot in her grappling as well. And I don't think Araujo is going to be able to hold down Alexa Grasso. And I see that being the difference in the fight, because I feel as if Viviane Araujo is one of these girls that she needs time, and she needs to be able to hold down girls and breathe, take a breath, get her cardio back. And she can't just get constant takedowns. When girls stand up right after they get taken down by Araujo, you see Araujo start to take real heavy breaths, get real tired, slow down, start to become more hittable on the feet. And I feel as if Alexa Grasso is going to be the better striker over time. And I think on the ground, she's going to be maybe taken down a couple times, but be able to use her jiu-jitsu to create a scramble and reverse, get on top, or use it to get back up to her feet and not give Araujo that chance to control and have a long time to breathe and stay on top and work ground and pound and things like that. I think she's going to get right back up and make her work again. And I see Grasso having the far superior cardio. I think that technically everywhere she's just a little bit better. I just think Araujo is a great athlete. She's very explosive, very physical, and that can kind of closen up that gap, and that's why it makes for a close competitive fight. And one thing that I think really favors Grasso majorly is the 5-round factor. I think those 3 rounds, Araujo would have a lot better chance to maybe steal a couple rounds with the grappling, or even be able to be competitive in the striking around and then steal a round with the wrestling. But I feel as if with this being 5 rounds, that Grasso's really going to be able to cement it and show her worth down the stretch and show that she's the real winner in the fight. And I feel as if how this fight's going to go is Grasso's going to be moving, pulling Araujo into the bigger shots. She's going to be landing some nice combinations, landing some big punches. I think Araujo's going to have the chain to take it and land some shots of her own, but I think they're going to be fewer and far in between. And I think as the fight goes on, they're going to be even less and less pronounced in terms of power and impact. And I also feel as if that Araujo may get a few takedowns, but she's not going to be able to cement position and control Alexa Grasso off her back. I think Grasso is going to be able to create scrambles, get back up to her feet, get Araujo tired, and then I think it's going to be easier, more smooth sailing on the feet after Araujo does start to fatigue a little bit. So for me, I'm going to pick Grasso to win this fight via decision. I think she's going to announce herself as maybe the next title challenger with this win, because I could see the winner of this fight facing Valentina Shevchenko or facing whoever is the champion at the time. And that's what I'm going to go with. I'm going to go with Alexa Grasso by decision. So there's the full card predictions and breakdowns video for this card. Hope you guys enjoyed it. And as far as my parlay of the week goes, I'm going to go with the parlay of Askar, Askarov, and Tatsuro Taira. For my most confident pick this week, I'm going to go with Joanderson, Brito. There you have it. That's my full card breakdown and predictions video for UFC Vegas 62, Alexa Grasso versus Viviane Araujo. And like I said at the beginning of the video, man, let's try to get some more interaction on this one. I didn't get very many comments or likes on my last video, and I didn't really like that. So, man, if you heard this and you're wanting to help out the channel, then put a comment down below and tell me what you think about my predictions video, if you think I could do something to make it better, or what you think about my predictions, who you're predicting, who you're betting. I want to get some more interaction on this video, so I'd really appreciate that. And besides that, just check out the Patreon for all my bets on this card. I got already 5 or 6 bets, I believe, locked in for UFC Vegas 62, and I'm going to be looking at KSW, LFA, and several other shows that there's going to be odds for MMA this weekend. So the grind never stops in terms of betting on all these other promotions. We're up well over 90 units on the year, so that's something I'm pretty proud of, and I think that proves that the Patreon is worth the money that you pay for it. And yeah, man, outside of that, I just really appreciate everyone supporting the channel. And I'm going to be back next week with the UFC breakdown and predictions video, so make sure to be on the lookout for that. And thanks for watching.